The top 5 budget decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are Labyrinth, Plunder Patrol, Fur Hire, Punk, and Marine Zest, but I bet you want to know why. Also, as a bonus, every single one of these decks can be played on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. You won't have to drop a dime initially, and they'll only get stronger on that platform.
My guy, every single one of these Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks are $50 to $75 to build the core, are pretty powerful, and are pretty much banless safe.
Of course, big dog, in this video, I'm not only going to be breaking down those particular decks, I'm also going to be putting personal deck lists on my Patreon as a special thank you for helping me pay my editors. What's going on with y'all, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. I want you brokies to have something to look forward to when it comes to the 25th anniversary mega tins, so why not pick up something that's not only cheap inside of the tins, but will only get stronger. I think that Labyrinth is an excellent choice here because not only has it already filled the role of a powerful Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, it's relatively easy to play. But this deck isn't just turn your brain off and set cards face down. Figuring out the nuances of Labyrinth actually brings the deck to a whole nother level. Let's face it, guys, most trap-based Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks are slow. Like, slower than me in my math class.
1 + 1 is banana.
But what I like the most about Labyrinth is that it uses a combination of powerful monsters to not only set up those trap cards to stop your opponent, but even use those trap cards to turn their set, which is a big weakness for trap-based Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks. Basically, it disregard every time Yugi say I set one card face down and pass my turn, and uses the cards immediately. The deck is also getting even more support in the new upcoming set in Age of Overlord, a monster that not only allows you to summon other monsters to your side of the field, but also can set up some powerful trap cards as well. I personally think that even if Labyrinth does get addressed by the upcoming Forbidden list, it won't matter. Its versatility plus the new support that's coming out makes it a top contender, and of course, you can still play this in Master Duel too. I think that even if for some reason Konami decides to address Labyrinth on the Forbidden list, it will not matter. This deck just has too many powerful cards to be able to stop it from being a good budget Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. Plunder Patrol is also another deck that fiends for your booty. It's a deck that's actually pretty good right now because a lot of players are playing the attributes needed for Plunder Patrol to be able to thrive. And while the strategy itself may not be reprinted in the tin of Dueling Heroes, the treasures have already been trolled for this strategy. You can get the deck for a mere coins. Really, they might be paying you to pick up this deck. Now, the reason why this deck is even cheaper because of the Megatins is because the Adventure cards have been reprinted into oblivion, making them extremely accessible. The Adventure cards work extremely well for Plunder Patrol because not only do they allow you to discard the Plunder Patrol monsters to the graveyard to get some really good effects, they also provide protection for those effects and monsters to use for some of your more powerful plays. Now, it's pretty cool how harmoniously these cards work with one another, but unfortunately for Master Duel players, these cards are almost unplayable because of them being on the ban list. But I'd probably be lying if that was the only reason I'd be talking about them. It just so happened that the Runic cards are also reprinted in these tins of Dueling Heroes. The Runic cards at one point in time were an insane price, but now they're very accessible as well. The Runic cards give you similar advantages as the Adventure cards, allowing you to discard your powerful Plunder Patrol monsters to gain their effects, but the Runic cards themselves actually allow you to draw a ton of cards and build some pretty insane boards. And that's also why we're talking about the other pirate deck in Fur Hire. This gives a budget Plunder player so many options. Whether you want to play the Runic or Adventure engine is strictly up to you. You could even play a combination of both, but another strategy that actually gets cheaper because of the Megatins and the Runic cards is easily Fur Hire. It's crazy, my boy, because Fur Hire is another pirate deck. Now walk the plank. I mean, hey, you can say that I'm here for booty. No. For all we know, this deck could actually be Plunder Patrol's arch nemesis. But the great thing about the Fur Hire strategy is that it actually takes full utilization of your entire extra deck and allows you to be able to summon some really powerful monsters that can gain you significant advantage. Another huge differential is that the sprite cards actually lend a huge helping hand. The sprite cards unfortunately did not get reprinted inside of the Megatons, and I don't really see them getting reprinted anytime soon. So these are cards that I would strongly recommend picking up while they're cheap, seeing that the sprite cards can actually be mixed in so many other decks, but also considering that both the Runic and Fur Hire cards are dirt cheap, the expense of the sprite cards right now won't even hurt you. And some of the other decks that I've been talking about, there's some minor and major differences. For Fur Hire, it's almost 1-to-1. There's almost no difference between both of those decks. So what you're playing on Master Duel is almost going to be what you are playing in the TCG, which I think is really, really cool. But let's say that we're looking for something that has a little bit more variance between Master Duel and TCG. For this, I think that Punk is probably your best bet because there's a huge difference between both of those decks in both of those particular fields. In the actual card game, Punk typically uses the Gold Pride monsters in the TCG, which helps not only give the deck more potency, it actually ironically gives the deck consistency as well, and more power plays. And while Gold Pride cards were not reprinted inside of the Megaton, Gold Pride Punk is still fairly cheap, though I would probably pick these cards up before it's too late. By the way, big dog, you're using my TCG player link down below in the description, right? Right? I knew I could count on you. I ain't gotta send them Squamata boys after you. Because nobody wants Squamata after you, right? Right? For Master Duel players, Gold Pride isn't out yet, which actually is kind of cool. You get to experience the Punk strategy before the Gold Pride cards and the Chaotic Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon card that we don't have in the TCG. It's crazy because you're experiencing two totally different decks. Punk with Chaotic Ruler means that there's so many different variants you can play, and if you ever get bored of one particular version, you can always play the other. And of course, lastly was Marine Cess. There were actually a ton of other Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that I wanted to talk about, and I can't wait to talk about them in the budget tier list. But the reason why I picked Marine Cess is because statistically in the competitive scene, Marine Cess is kind of good. In one of our most recent biggest events, Marine Cess did really well, and the best thing about it is that overall, the Marine Cess cards are extremely cheap. What I like the most about Marine Cess isn't necessarily variance in itself. There isn't too many different Marine Cess cards that you can play inside of the deck to make it feel completely different, but there are different other staple Yu-Gi-Oh cards you can incorporate inside of this deck to be able to beat your opponent's strategies. And also, to be fair, every time some new water support does come out, it does seem to be Marine Cess support, as you could just slap it on it inside of the deck and make it work somehow. Last time I remember, Marine Cess players were playing Kashtira Ogre, and I've even seen Marine Cess players use Shark cards to be able to Xyz summon, even though it's primarily a Link deck. And unlike some of the other decks that I mentioned, Marine Cess in Master Duel is very, very cheap. Off the top of my head, there's maybe like 5 ultra rares you might actually have to grind into, but the other ones can be picked up through the Solomon Great structure deck, or just already the cards that you have to be able to make your deck. As a Yu-Gi-Oh player, I'm always looking for some of the most powerful, popular cards that players are using, especially if they're on a budget. So of course, if you want to see more amazing videos, you already know what to do, big dog. Be sure to check out these other ones, and I'll be sure to catch you on the next one.